For what?
I hope my grandmother's going to be alive, but
Hiring you or your mom?
she can't not do my team.
No, I doubt. You never know. There's a waiting list somewhere. There's like a list of hygiene.
Okay, but is it like actually for boosters and ones that like
They're phenomenal.
turned out?
Phenomenal.
See, in Memphis they've got Connie there that's got a dental hygiene program for 18 months, and they turn out 200 kids every year, and none of them know how to like actually scale. Everybody's just straight average on it.
Yeah, no, they're all good. They're like different offices. And just one. If something opens up, let them know. Can't help it. When you're the best, you're the best. I wouldn't doubt it.
I mean, like I'm not even like saying that as like a thing. Like her options are either move up here or
MKC.
see, we have 18,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's been approached about like teaching
Mm-hmm.
there because like she's going back and getting her master's.
We've done a hygiene school here too. Johnson County, they've got one. MKC has one.
They don't have anybody that like actually teaches how to like actually do scaling. They just do the. And also, do you refer out, or do you like only do cosmetic, or do you do actually surgery?
Whatever I want. I don't do much surgery. I brought in a guy to do all the same. I do some. Just me. But then I brought in Liam. He's going to start working on Mondays.
Oh.
Welcome back to VBS. Everyone's 3 favorite letters. I feel like we're missing a section behind you. You just ran them off. You're not the whole section. I mean, I love you, but, but oh, here they come. Picking their, hey, I didn't put labels on the rows, so you sit wherever you want. All right, what did we learn about yesterday? The ark. Yes. What do you think we're going to learn about today? What do you think, Jude? The animals on the ark. Yes. It's going to be exciting. I cannot wait to hear about everything you learn about the animals. Somebody find out how many animals were on the ark. I think a lot. They were by Tuesdays. At least 12. We got at least 12. That's the low number. I don't know. So, no. Joel, do you think we should roll the gospel chariot along? I think we should. Roll the gospel chariot along. Roll the gospel chariot along. Roll the gospel chariot along. And we won't tag on behind. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up. And we won't tag on behind. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up, and we won't tag on behind. If a sinner's in the way, we will stop and pick them up. If a sinner's in the way, we will stop and pick them up. If a sinner's in the way, we will stop and pick them up, and we will take them behind. But if the devil's in the way, we will him, and we will take them behind. You guys are such good singers. I love it. It seems like everyone's a little sleepy this afternoon. Are you guys all tired? You're kind of. I think that's an excellent thing that we should do. This little light of mine, but I can't remember how. How do you have? How does it go? How's the light go? Like with a finger, with your pointy finger. Was it is it low or is it like what middle somewhere in there so everybody can see it like that one? I think that's great. I think we should. Everybody got their light out? All right. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine all the time. Let it shine. All around the neighborhood, I'm gonna let it shine. All around the neighborhood, I'm gonna let it shine all the time. Let it shine. Hide it under the sun. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine all the time, let it shine. Won't let Satan it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let Satan it out. I'm gonna let it shine all the time, let it shine. You guys are so good. Inside outside, we can't do in right out right yet. Maybe Wednesday we'll do it before I turn you loose to your teachers. I can't do it 2 days. I can't do it 2 days early. I can't do it 2 days early. Do you guys want to go fishing in a sailboat? Well, that was easy. All right. How do we do the sailboat? This? What if you went this way? Oh, you can go either way? We can sail either way? Which way? Which way? That way? What do you think, Hannah? This way? Like a sailboat? I think so too. Peter and James and John in the sailboat. Peter and James and John in the sailboat. Peter and James and John in the sailboat. But along came Jesus, walking on the seashore. Along came Jesus, walking on the seashore. Along came Jesus, walking on the seashore. Out on the rolling sea, that's all I saw. I'm gonna cry. Then that's what it is. And that's what it's out on the rolling sea. All right, it is time for class. So I will see you guys. I cannot wait to hear all about the animals. How they got the animals on the ark. Dinosaurs. Joel wants to know about dinosaurs. Get on that, Michaela. Joel is a dinosaur expert. I love it. I bet he does. I bet he does. What do we need to do before class? Turn up those ears. You got to hear everything. There we go. There we go. All right, everybody's turned up. I will see you in just a little bit. Bye-bye. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. Tiptoe very softly. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. Tiptoe, tiptoe in God's house. So very softly. No. Yes, I will fill in. Yes, we're going to talk dinosaurs very briefly. Very briefly. How is everybody doing tonight? You're doing quite well? That is fantastic. I'm glad to hear that, Seth. Is everybody else doing okay? Just tell me if that's too loud. Is that too loud? Zach says okay. I usually use JD, but JD's hiding in the back. Like most people, I was gone out of town for a week, and when I came back, I got the material. So I was kind of quickly trying to put a lesson together. And if you have not read or seen the adult book for the Noah for this series, you'd find out, and John will tell you, they're not very good. They're just not very good. There's not a lot of information in there. Zach's going, yeah, he had to teach this. Did you teach all 5 days? No. 2 days. There's not a lot of information in there. So for this class, there was, I would say, there's 4 verses and about 15 minutes worth of information. So if you guys are looking for a large cookie time, this could have been your night. However, I decided to write my own lesson. So, bad news. We'll be here a while. No, we'll just be here long enough. We have till 8 o'clock to have a discussion about animals that's in around Noah, right? But it's going to have to extend a little further out, right? To really have understanding animals. So what do we know about Noah so far? What have we looked at? Come on, it's not a tough quiz. Seth, come on, you can tell me the answer. He built an ark. We did that one night. What else did you learn about him? He was a righteous man, right? What else did we learn about? Him and his family are saved. They obey God. All these great things, right? And so tonight we're going to talk about the subject is animals. So what do we know about animals? Right? A lot we could know. What do we know? So, yes, Nate, what do you know about animals? They don't have souls. So let's start by going back. And I was in such a rush to leave, I left my home, which is a bad thing. Oh, and Gene wanted me to let you know that he was going to teach today, but he was busy out buying animal crackers. And so, animal cookies, so we could all have animal cookies today. Is that right? He left them at home. Okay, so let's start in your Bibles. Let everybody open their Bibles to page 1.
Yeah, page 1. It says Genesis on the top. Page 1. Genesis 1, verse 1. It should be page 1 of your Bible, right? Well, in this Bible, it happens to be page 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light, and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning it was first day. So we have day 1, right? Day 2. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament which divided the waters which were under the firmament, and from those the waters that were above the firmament. And it was so. So God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Okay, so remember that. There's what in the middle? A firmament. Okay? We'll talk about that later. And God said, let the waters be under heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and so it was. And it was so. I'm sorry, my dyslexia got the best of me. And God called the dry land earth, and he gathering together of the waters called he the seas. And God saw that it was good. So where was the water? Under the heavens, and it was in what spot? Gathered together. What does that mean? It's in one spot, right? Do you agree with that, Seth? Postulation. What? Yeah, were there 7 seas? There's 1. So how much land was there then? We don't know. Doesn't say. So we're going to talk a lot about these things. And God said, let the earth bring forth fruit. Bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and the tree that yielding fruit after his kind, and his seed in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself, and yet is kind, and God saw it was good. And the evening and night of the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament to the heaven, divided from night. Let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years. So we know what? There's seasons. And what does seasons mean? Changing the weather. Okay, so the weather is going to change. And let them be for lights, the firmament of heaven give light unto the earth. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And he also set them in the fermentation of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and rule over the night, and to divide the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning of the 4th day. And they let the waters, being abundantly in the moving creature that have life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth, in the open firmament of heaven. God created the great whales, every living creature that moveth, in which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl in the kind, and God saw that it was good. So what do we have now? Birds and fish. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill up the waters of the sea, and let the fowl multiply in the air. This is the evening and the morning of the 5th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creature of it after his kind, cattle and creepy things, and the beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So everything was made after their own kind. And so what do we have now? The animals, right? So day 4 and day 5, or day 5 and day 6, we get what? We all get at the animals, right? And so when we talk about Noah, we're talking about, they titled this part animals, right? And so we see things were created after their kind, and they were there. Now, where were the animals? What? On land. But where on the land were they? There's a big landmass.
It doesn't say specifically they were in the east.
It's a good thing you brought that up. So, let's go to chapter 2 and verse 20. Well, I'm going to start in verse 19. Chapter 2 and verse 19. That's page 3 in my Bible. Just trying to help. I'm just trying to help. Now I lost my place. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl in the air and brought them unto Adam. So where are all the animals at? They're with Adam. Okay, but at this point they're with Adam. Okay, so I guess the point is, and Sandy's bringing it out really well, is that, what? Oh, I really appreciate it. It's exactly what I wanted. Is that there are certain things we know and certain things we don't know, right? Do we know how many animals there were? Do we know where they were at? Do we know what the land looked like? Do we know anything about them? No, we don't. There's very little we know about the animals. I just read to you what we know. That's what we know about the animals. Very good. You're just helping me out every step of the way. What do you need to know? No. What do you need to know today? What? Say it. You don't need to know any of that. Here's what you need to know. You're going to say, well, Greg, this is a lesson I know, isn't it? Right, Ben? Is that what you're thinking? Ben's thinking, Greg, what are you doing? You're way off the reservation here. You're way out. You're totally lost. So I hope everybody can see this. Rachel wrote it for me, so to be clear. It says, steps of salvation. Hear, Hebrews chapter 5, verse 9. Believe, Hebrews 11:6. Repent, Acts 2:38. Confess, Acts 8:36 and 37. It says baptism, Acts 2:38. Live faithfully, 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 through 9. What's that? I hope not. Did she make a mistake? Hear, believe, repent, confess. Well, yeah, that happens right when you're baptized. Okay, I'm good. Right. It's a very good point. And so this is what we need to know, right? You think so, Ben? This is what we need to know. So I'm going to use this as an anchor for my lesson tonight. Okay, so what do we need to know? This is what you need to know. This is what you need to know and do, right, Nate? This is... I prefer yes, Mr. Rocco. But anyway, I'm just kidding around. So anyway, this is what we need to know. So let's turn over to Noah, Genesis chapter 8. What's that? What page? That's page 7 in my Bible. Oh, wait a second. I'm in Genesis chapter 7. I'm sorry. I confused you. It's still page 7. And 7 verse 8, it says, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, of the fowls and everything that creepeth upon the earth. And so he is supposed to bring all these things in, right? And how many was he supposed to bring in? Well, Okay, let's take it even further. What did Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughters eat? No, no, you're wrong. They're vegetarians until they got off the ark. So, could there have been clean and unclean? Okay, go ahead. All right, so I think the only thing that was be clean and unclean was not what you're eating, but like Randy said, what you're sacrificing. And I think that's where you're headed with it. But you have to remember that up to the point where they got off the ark, what did Noah, what did people eat? Who were following God? What were they eating? They were vegetarians because God told them that's all they could eat. Once they got off the ark, what could they eat? God told them they could eat meat, but he only told them what types of meat he could eat. I mean, right away, he just said eat meat, but eventually he warned them, all right? Not in Genesis 9, he didn't. He said just eat it. It's good for you. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to look at was to really start thinking about what are facts, because I'm an engineer and I have to talk to my city council all the time. And when I talk to them for this perspective of I'm going to give you facts. These are the facts. You guys can take the facts and make a decision, and decisions are usually political. It doesn't have to do with facts. But I tell you, 1 + 1 is 2. If you want to come out and have a campaign that says we're now announcing that 1 + 1 is 3, go crazy with it. You know, I'm here to support you. I'm going to give you the facts of the situation, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do tonight, is separate facts. And you've heard a lot of people say, well, this is speculation in this lesson, this is speculation here. And I want to make sure everyone understands a lot of these things are just purely speculative. So when we look and consider the flood and the things that happened and what occurred and the animals, I want you to consider and think about different things that people have said this week. So the other thing I want you to remember about Noah and the things that happened with Noah is that it was a miraculous event that happened. Everything about it. So the animals coming to him, did that just, animals just get an email saying, hey, it's time to go to the ark? That's what Ed thinks. No. God did that. The rain and the flood, the water coming from out of the ground. How'd that happen? Was that on Lezak's reoccurring cycle? So they knew it was showing up? No, it wasn't, was it? It was a miraculous event. The boat didn't sink. Now, if you sent me out there, maybe Seth and I were going out there, maybe throw Ben with us, and we're going to build a boat the next month. What are the odds that's going to float? Very low, right? I had a cousin build a boat once, right? He went down to Florida, spent about 6 years building a boat, got ready to push it out in the water. This old boat builder walked by him and said, hey, you know, you built that out of the wrong wood? And he goes, nah, it'll float. Pushed it out, sank right to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. So, you know, there's a reason why you have to use certain woods to build a boat or an ark or anything else that's going to float. And so the boat floated. Nothing happened to it. Then the waters receded, right? How do you get that much water? Have you ever been in a flood? Everybody's been in a flood and you watch that water barely go down and barely go down. Barely. Imagine the whole world flooded and then just drained away. Where did it drain to? How'd that happen? It's a miraculous event. They let a dove go out, right? Came back once, second time came back with olive branch. How many people have been in a flood? And what happens to your yard? What happens to your bushes after a flood? They're all dead. How long does it take to grow an olive tree? I don't really know, but I'm assuming it's more than 150 days. could take years. So it was a miraculous event that the water went down and there's a tree. Okay, can you imagine stepping on the land after a flood went over the top of the mountains? How mushy is that ground? See, John's got it now. Back to truth, or facts. We don't know how it dried up. And so there's a lot of things like that we do and do not know. And so that's why I want to remember that a lot of things that happened were miraculous actions that happened. And so you don't need to try to explain it to people more than saying, God did it. And it's just the way it is. He did, I can't explain it. God did a lot of things. He created the world and everything in it. How did he do it? I don't know. What's that? He spoke it. But that's just part of what God did.
Animals on the ark, you want to.
I hope everybody heard it. So Sandy brings up, I don't know if everybody heard it, is that did every animal make it on there? Well, the animals that made it on the ark were the ones that God wanted on there. So I always tell this joke, and Jared tried to improve it for me, of why are there no unicorns today? Why are there no unicorns today? Now, I always say they showed up 10 minutes late to the ark. But Jared said the better answer is there weren't any rainbows then, so they couldn't find their way. So I don't know. You can tell me which one you think is a better answer for that. So when we talk about it, one of the first things that a lot of people talk about was, and I don't know why, is Pangea, right? You hear a lot about Pangea. The earth was one big piece of land. And in Genesis 1 that we read, it kind of points to one piece of land, but it just says there's one sea. It doesn't say there's one sea that surrounded 7 continents. It just says one sea. So it's a little bit confusing. So when you say, well, there's 7 seas, well, man says there's 7 seas, but there's actually just one big thing of water. Seas. And so we can talk a little bit about that. So there's Pangea in one map, and that's where basically it says all the continents were together. And people say, well, that's because, it started sailing around the world, and a guy in, I forget what it was, 19-something, from Germany, he came up with the idea that it was that the continents are actually moving and that this could have been what the earth looked like. I think there's got one more picture. Kind of looks like that. But when you really study it, you can see how they actually they're close to fitting together, but they actually don't fit together. And so I don't know if they were actually all together. I don't know if they're not. I tell people like this. If I were making cookies and I made nice little round cookies, pulled them out of the oven, fantastic cookies, right? But before you saw the cookie, I took the cookie and broke it in pieces, put it on the counter, and I said, there's your cookie. Now, you can say, well, those pieces look like could have fit together and made one cookie. Or did the maker, which was me making the cookie, already have it broken and say, that's a cookie? So when God spoke it, did he speak it like this? Or did he speak it like we see today? It's a great question. What's the answer? It doesn't matter. This is what matters. Hey, you worry about that? Let me tell you about step salvation. Okay? Doesn't matter. We don't know. You don't. So here's an argument that people use that is all together. There are animals that are cross continents. You ever wonder why in India there are elephants and Africa there are elephants? Sandy says no. She didn't care. Some people point to Pangea and say, hey, look, the continents were hooked together. When they're hooked together, elephants were on the line. When they split, some ran this way, some ran that way. But you're laughing at me. There's people serious about this, John. Okay, so they've got this map. Okay, now you can do on the people side. Okay, this is a map that some of you guys have seen. There's a much better one that I have that I actually couldn't find for this lesson. But this is where they show where people started out and moved. Okay? And it starts off in northern Africa or in Saudi Arabia there, and it's really Iraq. And then they show this migration where people travel the earth. Now, the interesting thing is about this map, when they do the genetics, this is done through genetics. So they go through and they look at the bones of people who have died, and then they look and they see the genetics, how far back they go. Okay? Because one of the things they found out, and they were shocked to find this out, is did you know that every one of us, if we check our DNA, all have the same mother? You go all the way back, we all have the same mother. Now, scientists are choking on this right now because they can't explain it away. But it all goes back to one mother. And so they go through, and the problem with this map is the real map shows the movement of people going from basically the Middle East. And it goes out a little bit, and then there's this jump. There's this big jump. And they can't explain that. And then the genetics continue on. Anybody know what that big jump is? Zach, what's the big jump? No, it wasn't flood. Keep going in Genesis. Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel shows this jump of people. Now, when you study this in the genetics, what does this tell you? I'll give you some help. I know. That shows they're together. That shows they're apart. So if you want to pick one side of the argument or the other, I can do it. So you think it was never together? Oh, look. It had been together. You want to say they're always together? Say, oh, no, look at that. They always had to be apart. Okay? What does it matter? Doesn't matter. Does it affect your salvation tonight? Not one little bit. Okay? So that's one thing to consider. There's the movement of man, and where did man go? Where did the animals go? And how did they get here and there? How do they get grouped in these groups? Because there's definitely a pattern how they're grouped. So one of the things that was advertised in the bulletin, if you saw it, was that Greg is going to focus on dinosaurs, right? So I'm not. This is your focus. This is your focus moment, okay? So if you really want to hear about dinosaurs, focus in now. What is the largest dinosaur that we have all the bones for today? How big was it? Not pounds, height and length. Yeah. So you can prove that it exists. What? Nope. You watch too many movies. People watch too many movies. They think Jurassic Park's real, right? How big are the dinosaurs? The behemoth. It gives a description of it, right? A tail like a cedar tree. So it's thick. Does it ever say it's tall? No, not really. What's the biggest one we found? Is 8 feet tall, 20 feet long. It's pretty big. It's not the one with the big hump and the, yes, that's Joel, the name of it. The one that's neck sticks way up, the tail sticks way long. Brontosaurus, is that it? Okay, so in a brontosaurus, how many bones of a brontosaurus do we have? I'll give you a hint. You can count them on one hand. It's 3. It's 3 tailbones. The drawing for a brontosaurus was done by an artist back in the 1950s. I think it was 1953. You can check me on that. It was done from 3 tailbones. And this is what they believe it looked like. They used to have it in the Natural History Museum in Chicago. And I used to want to go there because I told my parents, man, look at this beautiful dinosaur. My dad took me over the corner that you can't see. You have the brontosaurus up there. So, you know, there's a big animal in front of you. You go in a little corner, had this little drawing about this big, and it says, these are the actual bones we have. And it put 3 in the back end of the tail. And it says underneath it, it's an artist's rendering of what they imagined the animal could look like. So imagine if I cut off 3 of your toes and hand it to someone and say, draw me a picture of them. Yeah, what are you going to get? Okay, T-Rex. Everybody heard about T-Rex? Yeah, Johnny? What's that? Yeah, it's what came out of their imagination. So people look at Jurassic Park and they see these ginormous animals, right? And they believe this is what dinosaurs are, right? All the dinosaur bones that we found are animals that are slightly bigger than bison, than those are elephants. They're slightly bigger than that, and that's all there was. Okay? So when we talk about the ark, and they say, how did get dinosaurs on the ark? First of all, were there dinosaurs on the ark? I don't know. I didn't take roll. Were they there? Don't know. If they're still existing and God wanted them on there, they were on there. Now there's two more things. There's in Job 38, it starts with an L. Leviathan and Behemoth. And so when we talk about there's like a dragon, there's about talks about dragons and dinosaurs. So the dragon that they have found the bones of is how big? What's that? Make a guess? It looks like a crocodile. It's actually a little smaller than a crocodile. Stands a little bit taller. And so all these movies that you saw, they show this big, huge animal breathing fire out everywhere. Is that real? No. No bones of that ever found. We found bones of a small animal that there's pictures of, hieroglyphics that show it breathing fire. So when it shows the knight killing the dragon, how big is the dragon? Not that big. So it's not as courageous as you thought he was. But that's just part of what was on. So people ask, how, I just want to make sure I go through my notes here and don't skip too much. So one of the questions is, who picked the animals? We talked about that. Who picked the animals that got on the ark? God did. Now, why did God have to have mosquitoes on the ark? It's a great question. I don't know. Did he really have to have wasps? Really? We couldn't have left those off? Snakes? Scorpions? Termites in the wood? So one of the things I looked up, this is kind of funny. This is just my own side story. So I looked up, how come the flood had to be as long as it was? I was thinking to myself, why would it have to be as long as it was? And because surely, people aren't going to be afloat and survive this, right? And so I'm thinking, well, was it kill ants? Well, ants die in less than 12 hours in a flood. I thought, okay, a cockroach. You always hear when the world ends, nuclear war, that the only thing that'll be alive is cockroaches, right? So they die, what's that? Rats. And rats. So I looked them up. The rats don't live very long when they're drowning. Cockroaches live 24 hours. It's like the longest living little critter that lasts in a flood. Just in case you want to know. If you want to try to flood a cockroach out by pouring water on them, it's 24 hours to kill them. In case you want to go that method, I don't recommend it. Because apparently they can swim too. So if you flush them, as the water goes down, they stick on the side and they crawl back up and back into your house. A lot of things I found out about cockroaches when looking this up. I'll tell you all my best information. So when we look at that, so how did they get in? How did they get in the ark? Yeah. God sent them and they walked right in, right? So what happened when they're in there? What was Noah's job for the animals? To take care of them. So what did God tell him to do? I'm not going to spend time to read it all because we don't have time. But he told them to bring food into the ark, right? For them to eat. So the question is, how much food would you need? Right? People conject this, right? Now, I've never been to the ark down, was it Tennessee or Kentucky? I don't know what they tell you there. So in here, it doesn't say. It doesn't say anything about how they did it. So here's what I'll tell you. What sort of event was it? What did I say happened? It's a miraculous event. So if we go look at the New Testament, because we go look, New Testament uses the Old Testament as a schoolmaster, right? Teaches you things, right? So Jesus has 5,000 men following him, plus their wives and their kids, right? He whips out 5 fish, feeds them all, right? So if Jesus can feed a crowd, do you think that God could feed all the animals if he's got 2 bales of hay? Absolutely. Should be no big deal for him. And so when someone asks about it, is that important? No. Here's what's important, right? Let's remember what's important. And a lot of people are going to try to get you confused on these things. So let's talk about geographic and geologic information about the flood. Okay? It's geology. Let's talk about geology for a minute. I know you guys are just thrilled. So here's the United States, right? Great picture of the United States. Now, the United States, was it in the flood? Sure was. It was in the flood, right? I know. People are laughing at me. It sounds like I'm kind of not being smart here. So the United States is in the flood. So when you have a flood, the water's got to drain away, right? A lot of speculation of how did the water drain? Where did the water go? And all things like that, right? If you think about how much water is on it, the United States is divided into 2 halves that water flows. You know, from the Rocky Mountains, it flows to the west and goes out, and the east, it goes down the Mississippi, right? Pretty simple concept. So if you think about how much water has drained out of the Mississippi, and you think about what we've had in the past years, there's the Mississippi Delta is where the dirt has washed out to. If you think about all the water that came out of the flood, how much water would have drained out of the Mississippi Delta and how much sediment would be there? Be an incredible amount. People say the Grand Canyon, it was carved out from the flood. Okay, people say, right? That's subjective, right? So, I don't think this thing has a little pointer on it, does it? So, right here is where the Gulf of California. It's where this whole area drains out right through here. It actually drains through the Grand Canyon. And if you took the volume of the Grand Canyon and it was supposed to have been eroded by the flood, what would you see? You'd see that volume of rock right here. Anybody been down there? Everybody looked at pictures of it? It's not there. So where'd the water go? It was a miraculous event. Back in the ground. God put it somewhere, but it's not there. It didn't drain like you think it did. But we do know certain things from the waters in the flood. So the flood was what type of water? Fresh or salt? Pick one. It is salt water. What's the ocean now? Yeah. The rain's fresh water. The oceans are salt water. The interesting thing is, the Dead Sea is what today? It's not alive because it has what? Salt. No, it has salt. Today it's got salt in it because it's dead water. You can't live in it. And so, because it's so salty, the salt level is so high. But if you go to the bottom of it, what do you find? Fossils of freshwater fish. Okay, so there's lots of questions about what water was in the flood, what was split, did water change, what happened to it? What do we care about? Okay, there's more geology. I know you guys love geology. Okay, this is a picture of the Great Pyramids. What do you see at the Great Pyramids here? This is just taken in the last few years, Google Maps. This is real, lifetime, live, that stuff. What is it? Is it got plants and people gardening and beautiful trees? It's arid. It doesn't rain there at all. There's damage to the pyramids. You've all seen it. The pyramids are all damaged. What's it damaged from? Rain. It's all rain damage. So back after they built them, what did it used to do there? It used to rain. Does it rain there now? Nope, doesn't rain there now. Look at, so here's a map that shows from Israel across Egypt. What's it look like today? This picture didn't turn out very good, but this is a picture of Jerusalem. And so this land was supposed to flow with what? Milk and honey. What does it have now? It's got rocks. Okay, it changed after the life of Christ, did it not? So climates change. Things happen. So how many climate change do we know of on Earth? How many climate change do we know of 100% sure, factual, that happened? It's the first one I read. There used to be a firmament. Is there one now? Nope. It's gone. Climate change. Adam and Eve. When Adam and Eve were alive and they're in the garden, what was it like? What did they have? Lush. They got kicked out and it was not lush. There was a climate change. God made a climate change. Before the flood versus after the flood, was there climate change? There had to have been. Come on, there was just a worldwide flood. That's got to be is a miraculous climate change. All these are. And then you look at Israel from when it was, when God sent Moses to the land that flows with milk and honey, to a land of rocks. Egypt, outside the pyramids. What? You ready for me? Okay. So Egypt, well, how did they build the pyramids? They built them by having the Jews go around the pyramids and they grew crops. They took those crops to make bricks, right? You tell me, where did they grow that? Because here's the pyramids. There's one right there. There's one right there. There's one right there. You see around here where they're growing crops? They're not growing any crops there. Because clearly there was a climate change. So in the Sahara, they found lush places. I'm going to give you one more. I don't have time right now to do it, but I'll bring it. So when we come back up, we're going to break here at 8 o'clock, and then we'll come back by 8:30. I'll give you 30 minutes to eat as many cookies as you can, Ben, okay? As many cookies as you can, 30 minutes. But I'll bring up a picture of Antarctica. Does Antarctica have ice on it? Did Antarctica always have ice on it? No, how do we know that? Go ahead, David. "500 years ago, when, what's his name? Piri Reis. He was a guy who went and sailed boats around the world. When he sailed and found Antarctica, he actually went and mapped all of Antarctica, drew where the mountains were, drew where the pastures were at, drew where the grass was at, drew where the trees were at. He's got a map of it, and I'll bring it up after break so you can see it. And so Antarctica in 1500s, in the 16th century, think about this, had no ice on it and was growing plants and there are animals alive on it. So when you think about it, so people doubted it. So there's this map, and I did a little research on them. Nobody believed them. They think it was made up. And so nobody alive today has seen the edges of the dirt, have they? Has anybody seen the edges of the dirt of the island? No, nobody has. So NASA went and they used some special photography cameras, whatever sort of technology they have. And they went through the ice and mapped the edge of the dirt. You know what they found out? It matches exactly. The only thing he doesn't have is there's a couple lakes in the interior. He doesn't have the lakes on there. But the whole outside of it and where the mountains are at, he has exact. Right, but this is a massive change in the climate. Yeah. The river's further over. Right. But there's lots of things to look at. If you ever lived in Springfield, Missouri, or been around Springfield, Missouri, you recognize that Springfield, Missouri it has a major beach on it. Okay? And most people don't notice it, but Springfield, Missouri, clearly there was an edge of a great amount of water there. And when the water went down, there's an area where there's a sandbar there. And nobody can explain it until you study the Great Flood. But what it really matters, I just want to keep pointing back at this. All these things, a lot of things are speculative, right? You've heard in the lessons, they talk about, hey, Noah was this good guy, right? He was a faithful man of God and everything. When we come back, we're going to talk about Noah and what it means versus the New Testament. All right? So go down, eat your cookies, try to come back by about 8:30, and we'll wrap up. Okay, we'll get started again for those who came back up. I know there's several downstairs, but we'll go ahead and get started. So on the screen in front of you, you'll see a picture of Antarctica. Okay, this is a drawing of Antarctica. It's done in 1500. I think it's 1541, but someone will have to fact check that. At that time, this is what it looked like. They sailed the shore, and this is what the shore looked like. NASA didn't believe it. You got to remember, what is NASA's number one goal? Always remember this. What is NASA's number one goal? To disprove God. NASA's goal is always to disprove God, because they want to prove that the earth exceeds. They want to go out and show there's no God out here. They want to prove it by like the dust that was on the earth, on the moon, and they're proved wrong. And everything they do a lot of things to disprove that there's a God. Now they'll tell you they're there for space, and they're there to do this, and they're there to do that. Why are they going to Mars? Seth, you love NASA. Why do they want to go to Mars? They want to prove what's there. Yeah, some people, they think they want to live there, which is crazy enough. But they want to prove that there's life there, because if they can prove there's life somewhere else besides here, that disproves what? God, right? So that's one of their goals. You have to remember that when you think about NASA and what they're up to. They're trying to disprove God all the time. Now, they're trying to do other things, don't get me wrong. They want to do space flight. They want to find out what's beyond. But a lot of what they want to do is a subplot, or whatever you want to call it, of what their goals are, is to disprove God. So NASA went and they tried to disprove this map. And like Randy was saying, and you can talk to David, they have tried to say that this is different things. And when NASA did their work and they laid it right on there, it was the same. They were speechless. They didn't know what to do. But it is what it is on here. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, because I had several more little things, was that on the genetics. You know, genetics now have shown that man has lived on the earth about 10,000 years. Now, they realize this plus or minus because they have to, the generations, as you go further back in the Bible, people lived 600 years, and generations span further than they do today. So when they looked at some of the generations in the DNA, it could span back as far as almost 20,000 years, but most people say it's somewhere around 10,000 years that they found it. And that really has befuddled a lot of people, because it really doesn't fit into evolution at all if man's only been around 10,000 years. And so they thought, okay, one of the things that people want to do is they want to prove that my doggy is a purebred, right? So they went and they did DNA. What, Randy? A purebred dog, right? And so they learned how to do DNA tests on dogs, okay? And they found out that 99% of all dogs are not purebreds. So I hate to break it to you if you paid extra for that. But one thing they found out is, how old are dogs? How old is it? Not a particular dog, but man is about 10,000 years on the earth. How long have dogs been on the earth? 10,000 years. Well, wait a second. How does that work? Because they had to evolve, right? So that doesn't fit. So let's go do monkeys. So let's do DNA tests on monkeys. So they did that. So if you look at monkeys, how long have monkeys been on the earth? Now, if you believe in evolution, it's got to be further back, right? What'd they find out? Yeah, Johnny's right. They're 10,000 years too. Well, how can that be? It just doesn't make sense. Well, it makes perfect sense because they're all created at the same time. Well, plus or minus a couple days. But they're all created at the same time. And so genetics have really thrown a stone, or the sand, the grit, the whatever, into the gears of all those people. So the biologists now are starting to say, look, here's what the facts are, because DNA doesn't lie. And they had to admit that. So this is what it is. People want to believe in evolution. They're still saying billion years. And they're now having great problems. It's really interesting to read about. So when we talk about Noah, there's a couple of little things I want to hit on. So when Noah So I don't have the slides up in there anymore, but when you look at when Noah came off the ark, it's clear that there were continents all over the world at this point, right? Australia is an island. How did the kangaroos get to Australia? Hop, hop, hop. Right across the water. They made it. How did the ants get to North America? Because there's ants right outside this building. How'd they get here? There's ants inside the building too. But I didn't really want to bring that up. Thanks, Nate. So, how'd they get there? How'd things get everywhere? It was all divided by water. How'd they do it? Zach, you know the answer. Zach knows the answer. He just doesn't realize it. Okay, so you go a couple chapters in past Noah. What were the men building? They're building the Tower of Babel. How did men get across the world? No? What happened to the Tower of Babel? They started buying a tower. God says, I need to confuse their language and do what to them? Scatter them. Poof. So I tell him, so here's Ben, Seth, and I. We're just hanging out, eating cookies downstairs. And all of a sudden, poof. Poor Seth, he ends up in China. Ben's in India. And I'm in Mexico. And I'm like, where did we go? Okay? That's what happened. So, how did the animals get everywhere? Zach, how did they get everywhere? I don't know. Don't care. But some people say, well, it's Pangea. There's all the animals just spread out and then the continents drifted apart. Okay, how far has California? When I was a kid, they always talked about Los Angeles someday is going to be next to San Francisco because the plates are moving, right? Now I'm getting old. I looked at the map. I was just at Los Angeles last year. Guess what? Los Angeles is the same place when I left it back in the 80s. When I went back last year, same place. Maybe it moved 2 inches. I don't know. But it is the same place I left it in. And so if you think these continents are moving around real fast and there's going to be all this drift and everything happen, are they moving a little bit? Yeah, they're moving. But when did they shift around? Don't know. Don't care, do it. Because what do I care about? We care about salvation, don't we? So, as a New Testament Christian, what do we learn from Noah? So I'm going to wrap up with this. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Yeah, Johnny? Okay, so Noah did what? Okay, first, what did he do? He heard God, right? And God said what? Build an ark. And he said there's going to be what? Flood. So what did he do? He believed him. All right? So he heard him, believed what he said. Now, he said he's a faithful guy, so he didn't have anything to repent of this time. But then what happened? There's a major what event? Come on, you can say it for me. There's a major water event, right? And what happened to sin at that major water event? What? It was all washed away. Then what happened after that? What happened to Noah after that? Did this happen? And Noah kind of fell off the wagon for a little bit, didn't he? He had a little sin in there, right? But in the end, in the New Testament, what do we read about him? What does Paul say about him? He was a righteous man. So he came back to God. What does that tell us today? What's the plan? What is the plan that he had for Noah? The same plan he had today. You hear the word, believe, repent, confess, you baptize, use your water event, you live faithfully. Even though you're living faithfully, can you make a mistake and fall away from God? Yes. Can you come back to God? Absolutely. Noah did it, you can too. So there was a plan. Noah followed the plan. Noah's in the Bible listed as a righteous man. Can you be a righteous man or woman? Yes, you can. So what's the message from Noah? I'm pointing it the whole time. There's the plan. Did you learn something different about Noah? I know it's about animals, right? I'm sorry, you didn't get a lot of animals tonight because there's only 4 verses on animals. But you got a lesson about Noah. That's a little different, okay? What's that? It's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Now, yes, Lois. That picture there? That is the land that's underneath the ice of Antarctica. So this gentleman found that it was just all land in 1541 when he took a boat around it. He mapped it, but now today it's all ice. So if you went down there today in your boat, you couldn't find that edge. And so when they say there's no climate change, somewhere in the last 500 years, they covered up with ice. And you can study all about it. They actually have woolly mammoths that have food in their mouth that they're eating, and they're frozen in that position. There's actually, palm trees that are in the ice, all with leaves on it and everything, in the ice. What happened? Don't know. Don't care. Don't know, don't care. What do I care about? Living faithfully. Following the plan and living faithful. That's all I have for you tonight. Hope you learned something and
Welcome back. Some of you look very tired. Maybe. Maybe. What did we learn about today? Yes, Tegan. How many animals were on the ark? That many. I love it. I love it. Yes, ma'am. About dinosaurs? Gotcha. I like it. And Joel, what did you learn about? Elephant? Did you learn about an elephant? Yeah, I like it. And you guys have dinosaur tails. I love it. Hannah, let me see your dinosaur tail. That's beautiful. And your elephant. Yes, ma'am. Oh, man. You have long measuring sticks. I like it. Yes, ladies. How to use a yardstick? Do you have to use a yardstick in the yard? Oh, you don't have to measure just your yard? How to measure a tree? I like it. Yes. Okay. Could have put smaller animals. Yes. Yes, Tegan. Whoa, what is that? A stegosaurus and an elephant. Yes, ma'am. Animals. And a giraffe, an elephant, and a rhino. Yeah, Jude, what do you got for me? You learned how to measure without a yardstick? Wow. That's pretty amazing. Yes, sir. All right, fair enough. Yes. That who's never dumber than a box of rocks? Who's never dumber than a box of rocks? My dad? You and I are gonna have to sit down at some point.
Didn't learn to do.
Well, I think we learned a lot of the good ones. I just think I've forgotten. I've been right, I think I right happy all the time. I'm feeling sick. Really fast or really fast? I'm down with a friend, I'm ready, right, happy all the time. I'm down with a friend, I'm ready, happy all the time. Flower to small leg. Ah, we have to wait till 87. B47.